This is Jane Douglas for GameSpot UK. We're here with Max Cant, art director on Bodycount, and we're here to talk specifically about the art of the game. Thanks for joining us, Max.
Cool, my pleasure. Nice to be here.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about kind of the top level stuff. The palette of the game, it's pretty bright, it's pretty colourful and vibrant.
Yeah.
Tell us about the palettes you used and what we should be looking out for.
Cool, okay. So the main thing that we set out to do is to make a game based on colour. We didn't want to do a drab desaturated one. So all of the colour palettes in the game are basically the full colour wheel, the full colour spectrum cut around about yellow and opened out across all three acts. So the first one, we start in Africa, it's sort of yellows and greens and stuff. We did that because we wanted to get away from just this dry, dusty, predictable African sort of look to things. When you go into the second act, you transition into more blues, darker, more urban environments of Asia. And then when you go into the third act, you've got this sort of hellish, sort of crucible end game stuff. So you've got all the oranges and reds and all the way back to yellow again, which works quite nicely. But they're not gaudy colours. We've been very careful to like steer clear of the cheaper primaries and go into like more unusual ones, which is nice. And the Target have their own colour palette or lack of it because they're all black and white, which is a big shock when you see them.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about Target because we saw them today in the demo. They sort of look like medieval knights a little bit with the this kind of slitted helmet. Tell us about the design and the influences on them.
Yeah, they are quite like knights. Their areas are like their buildings and stuff, quite similar to castles. They really came about as a design from two things that combined together. The first one was just the phrase, the cutting edge, because we wanted to make them really sort of scientifically advanced. And again, Andy was saying, there's nothing in them that isn't real world weapon technology, but it's just a really nice execution on it. So the phrase cutting edge was the sort of in for me. It was the thing that gave me the inspiration for making everything sharp, first of all. And that goes hand in hand with the sort of 80s Renaissance for style that is pretty prevalent everywhere at the moment. We looked outside of games for influence. I didn't want to just put guys in black combats with goggles and stuff for that, so I wanted it to be different. And the second thing, the main thing that went into the style sort of decisions was the idea of could you stealth a human being? Could you take stealth technology and apply it to a person? So we had a lot of problems early on with folks saying, no, you can't do it, you just can't model it all in straight lines. And I was laughed because I thought it was, well, it's just low poly modeling in some ways. But it's the idea about presenting planar surfaces and like angular stuff like ablative armor all the time with a cutting edge. So all the troops and all the assets have this sharp edge, technological stealth look to them, which is quite cool.
Yeah, they do look like stealth bombers. They've got the kind of radar invisible flat planes all over them, and the red neon as well. Where does that come from?
That's just a pure 80s hook.
Just like a sort of Tron thing, maybe?
We found out about Tron like once we'd already sort of started down the route, so if anything it was steering clear of some of their aesthetic stuff, but it was mostly just from looking at contemporary media and stuff, music, cinema and things. It's just there is this big 80s Renaissance, and I wanted to do something that really was going to be part of that instead of just making a gamey game. So I wanted to look outside and try and get something fresh in for the look of it, which has worked out really well. It just kind of clicked.
And that kind of 80s aesthetic edge also you find in the game in the sort of exaggerated stunt death, that 80s action cinema thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of the old qualities, the old retro look to things. So you will see A-Team style guys coming out of balconies and exploding guard towers with huge flailing arms behind them, and some really good collateral kills with nice face plants on concrete, which are quite good.
Do you see Bodycount as part of this movement away from the kind of grim and gritty, like military shooter, with a wave of more colourful shooters coming our way? Yeah,
definitely. It's really part and parcel of the same sort of movement. I think when you start a project that's going to be a couple of years, you're always going to have other people around the world who are thinking the same thing. So I'm quite glad that we're not alone in the fact that we're trying to make something that's more colourful and a little bit more fun, that kind of harks back to the sort of classic arcade retro quality of games.
We joke in the office about the the teal and orange palette. Is that something we'll find in your game, or is that something you steered away from?
No, you can probably find a little bit of most palettes in it. Like, I'm running out of colours towards the end of it to use. So all the colour palettes, the real world stages have colour palettes specifically picked to match them, and that's the main colour wheel. The network colour palette is primarily blue and cream with smaller orange accents and stuff. And most of their colours, they're based on classic American military stuff, so the 7th Cavalry and that kind of thing. It's tied into the sort of comic arcade style.
We'll come back to character designs. The other characters after Target we've seen today are the sort of African militia,
Yeah.
I guess, and the pirates. I guess you call them pirates.
Yeah, militia and pirates, they're out to get whatever they can get their hands on.
And the pirates are would you call them kind of caricatures? They're sort of got body paint and like these orange trousers.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say they were caricatured. They're sort of accentuated in the equipment and kit that they wear, but the proportions of the people are much more realistic than you would want to go to for a caricature. I think a lot of the dressing on those guys is based on old sort of 80s and 90s comic style stuff. So I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Cam Kennedy. A lot of Cam Kennedy and Mike McMahon influences went into their staples of Judge Dredd and classics, Road Trooper and stuff as well. So they've got larger packs. There's quite a theatrical asymmetry to them, but contrapposto in the figures. But we try not to mess about with the people too much so that they look like people.
Yeah, absolutely. And any other strong comic influences we should be looking out for?
No, but there was awareness that Captain America would be launching around about the same time that we would. So there'll be nods to sort of 40s American military look in the sort of hero and network multiplayer meshes. So they've got like nice packing and webbing and stuff on them. That was a conscious decision. That's probably the closest comic thing there is left in there.
All right, amazing. Well, we'll be looking out for it. Thanks very much for joining us.